Well, welcome to the Australian Institute of International Affairs. My name's Alistair Roth. I'm Executive Director of AIIA Victoria. Great to have you all here. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet, whether we're here in person in Dyson House or those kindly joining us online. So really appreciate your interest. We're here to discuss how Asia's rise is shaping the future of communications and how to plan for it. We're also here to launch the first book from Oliver Stelling. Here it is, and there's copies on sale over here. Oliver is an international advisor with more than 3 decades of experience in corporate and government communications, including 25 in Asia. He's worked in various different roles for global networks in China, Singapore, Malaysia, and Dubai, where at some point our paths crossed in the past. His main focus is on East-West relations, strategic communications, and public diplomacy. So, Oliver, congratulations on the book. Over to you, and we look forward to hearing about it.
Thank you very much, Alistair. It's my pleasure to be here tonight and talk to you all about my book. Great audience. And also good morning and good afternoon to those joining us online from other parts of the world in different time zones. I suppose many of us share views about the evolution of international relations and also some growing concerns about great power competition. While this is obviously linked to foreign policy, diplomacy, and trade relations, the future of international relations is also based on something more intrinsic, the theoretical underpinnings of communication and communications, the one with the S. I'll come back to that, no worries. William J. Bernstein, a historian and author of Masters of the Word, How Media Shaped History, wrote this: "The words politics and communication are nearly synonymous. Politics is indeed very much communication applied in the service of power. But due to the rising power of the public voice in a more connected world, real influence depends also on the optimized engagement of multicultural audiences. The increase in global and regional trade and travel and online dialogue among publics around the globe comes with a lot of benefits, but also challenges. So when people get more exposed to worldviews they are unfamiliar with, they often reject them instead of trying to understand them better. This clearly calls for a change in mindset. After all, states or political parties that push their own views are not unitary actors that reflect all perceptions of entire populations. So refocusing on the development of communication strategies that resonate with audiences should become a top priority for professionals in charge of shaping perceptions and protecting reputations. That's what my book is about. The chapter structure mirrors the process of communicators go through when preparing for and taking a more holistic approach to communications planning and the implementation in today's fast-changing world. And as many of you know, a more frequently invoked phrase in both the East and West is the stated aim of achieving mutual understanding. I tap into that in my chapter about communication theory, chapter 2. First of all, there must be a willingness to listen and a real commitment to purpose, openness, diversity, inclusion, and trust building. But how exactly do we get there? So let's get started. It all begins with lessons from the rapid rise of Asia's emerging markets. As Alistair just said, I spent 25 years in East, North, and Southeast, in Southeast, North, and West Asia, aka the Middle East. And I've seen how these nations developed so super fast. And there's a lot that we can learn from that. Many are actually also no longer emerging. They have arrived, and their fast progress has altered operating environments and changed global perceptions. So that's why we are now living in the Asian century. And this is not about a single nation or region dominating the global conversation. These days are over. Asian century refers to the resurgence of the most diverse region in the world, or mega region, 4.7 billion people, 61% of the global population. So no one can ignore that. Anyone involved in cross-cultural relations must adapt to that. Speaking of which, adapting. More than 20 years ago, my former boss, Vic International CEO Scott Meyer, and Charles Fombron, professor at Stern School of Business of New York University, pioneered reputation management. It was a real breakthrough moment for public relations. Meyer made clear that research plays a crucial role in reputation management, as judging reputations needs agreements on standard terminology, a defensible measurement, and clarity about the process behind it. And also academic and business literature reviews, focus groups, and surveys with stakeholders. And now communication professionals need to expand research into history, culture, and geo-economic influence, because this clarifies public views in multicultural environments and also sheds light on shifting perceptions about globalization. Afshin Molavi, a senior fellow at the Foreign Policy Institute of the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, wrote this: if we define globalization as the increasing cross-border interconnection of goods, people, services, capital, and ideas, and not the convergence toward Western ideas and structures, as some define it, then it remains alive and well. And that is a good point. Being embedded in global hyperconnectivity means that globalization won't vanish. Parag Khanna, the author of The Future is Asian, a book that so much inspired me to write my book, expressed the well-established and deeply rooted views that shape the prevalent perceptions in both East and West. Here's what he said: from the Western perspective, most communication related to Asia is still at Asia rather than within Asia. It is more about selling than communicating or understanding. However, for Khanna, there's already a rising but quiet confidence about a rise in discourse power among Asia's well-run democratic technocracies. This is what he said: it will not be measured in Western recognition, but in the continued pursuit and achievement of modernization. And modernization is indeed what matters a lot. A key number to keep in mind is 26 trillion US dollars, or 1.7 trillion US dollars a year. This is according to a 2017 report by the Asian Development Bank, the amount developing Asia will need to invest between 2016 and 2030 to battle poverty, boost economic growth, and fight the climate crisis. And that is clearly underway. Much of Asia is investing billions of dollars on roads and rail networks, renewable energy, AI, education, finance, public health, and more. And many of these investments have become engines of inclusive growth as well as regional and global integration. For decades now, the United Arab Emirates placed its bet on predicting the future and is now leading the field as a real innovation trailblazer, driven by smart investments in future-ready technology, infrastructure, and logistics. And Saudi Arabia now follows that same path. Here's something I learned in my early days in Dubai. Don't just build tall towers, build landmarks. That impressed me back then. I thought, yeah, that's exactly what it is about. And as you may know, Asia already boasts the world's tallest tower, the fastest train, and even the largest airport. Many Asian leaders recognize that such accomplishments attract the best talent, entrepreneurs, and investors. And it can also swiftly advance discourse power. As I said, the underlying aspects of communication help when getting involved with diverse cultures, governance models, and business environments. However, communications is a term that does not really draw much public attention outside the PR industry. And after all, it sounds like communication, and we all know how that works, don't we? Right? So when the US and China push the reopening of dialogue and repair of deteriorating ties, they usually say this: we must keep the lines of communication open. Absolutely. It just came up again during US-China talks at the ASEAN meeting in Jakarta just a few days ago. But making progress depends on how this dialogue evolves over time. What we witness is the constant opening and then closing of these lines of communication. That commands a strategic approach to achieve desired outcomes by placing an emphasis on authenticity plus an engagement model that avoids disrupting the open lines of communication. An analysis of the vast but not so widely known body of literature about communication theory reveals some great insight about how to get there by reshaping strategic communications. That was my main study back in the 1980s, a long time ago, about 40 years ago, but I still remember it. Western communication theory is rooted in philosophy, sociology, anthropology, and linguistics. Asian communication theory, on the other hand, is not based on one consistent model of scientific research in a culturally homogeneous region. It is largely founded in the classic works of Chinese and Indian philosophies and heavily influenced by the variety of religions, beliefs, and cultural values that emerged over thousands of years. The German psychologist and linguist Karl Bühler explained the need to move on from the one-dimensional sender-receiver model, the transmission of predetermined and fixed content from one head to the other. His point was that how a message is received depends on the way it is encoded by its sender through verbal, paraverbal, and nonverbal means, and the degree to which the recipient can decode it. Alfred Schütz was an Austrian philosopher and social phenomenologist who ranks among the most influential sociologists of the 20th century. One of his best-known theorems is the shift of intentional actions from because motives to in order to motives. Because motives mark acts based on rationales that stem from the past. In order to motives, on the other hand, are about acting based on one's envisioned future. And everyone in public relations knows that this is important. You know, the envisioned future is what people want to hear about because it answers the imminent question, what's in it for me? Why should I engage with you, right? So that makes it particularly significant for positioning and messaging, which lays the foundation for vision and mission statements and also for narratives. Paul Watzlawick was an Austrian-American communication theorist and philosopher. His famous 5 axioms of communication also add a whole range of new perspectives. The best known one is, one cannot not communicate. That refers to facial expressions and gestures, and it means that not engaging at all also sends a message, just not the desired one. Shelton Gunaratne was a Sri Lankan journalist and professor of mass communications who delved into the Asian communication theory. With the dominant theoretical paradigm on information production and communication remaining Western-centric, his academic works were centered on de-Westernizing communication and social science research. So when you look at this, and of course there's much more to look at, but if you just look at this, you see there are obviously differences here in the approach to communication theory, but there's much to learn about the basic tenets of people-to-people communication, the successful management of intercultural dialogue, and methods to foster voluntary sharing and advocacy. So let's look at the best way to achieve that. Purpose and shared values. Years of declining public trust in institutions, corporations, media, and government should induce a serious review of PR's actual value proposition and how to rebuild confidence. What helps is a clear commitment to purpose and shared values, and getting more involved in making rational decisions that impact reputations. Telemedia is Asia Pacific's leading media intelligence platform and dedicated to connect media and PR professionals in order to drive targeted media engagement and informed decision-making. Michael Webster, its director, is convinced that understanding how the media works provides the foundation for many other communication skills PRs require today. This is a good point. And another good point is earning, not claiming. As Robert Phillips, former CEO of Edelman Europe, pointed out, trust is not a function of PR. It is an outcome, not a message. By the way, the same applies to happiness. Right now, we see happiness popping up everywhere. Delivering happiness. No, it's not a message. Do it. And then we feel like you deliver happiness. So I'm convinced that all this calls for the progression from classic PR and mere storytelling to the previously mentioned more inclusive approach empowered by full executive authority. The industry's most visionary and experienced leaders obviously know that engaging with the C-suite reduces the odds of misunderstandings about content, the available time window, and expected results. The advantages stretch across tangible reputational gains and higher returns, plus public approval, third-party endorsement, and advocacy. Some global agencies have made enormous progress in this area. APCO Worldwide appointed CNN International's emerging markets editor John Defterios as a senior advisor. Brunswick Group named Pascal Lamy president of the Paris Peace Forum and the former director general of the World Trade Organization as the chair of Europe. And what we also witness is the emergence of new strategic advisory firms that help business leaders navigate today's complex and volatile international landscape. Westexec Advisors is run by former national security advisors with deep geopolitical and policy expertise. They offer something very unique, bringing the situation room to the boardroom. John Brennan, the former director of the CIA and deputy national security advisor for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism, joined the firm as principal. Not everyone can make these moves, obviously, but being or becoming a thought leader and getting involved in decision-making is always better than having to weigh options and start with storytelling after business decisions have been made. Storytelling is still important, but you want to be involved in everything that happens before the storytelling starts. That's future ready. And it sure heralds a higher degree of longevity of the comm strategies they develop. As I mentioned when talking about Alfred Schütz in Order to Motives, communicators who plan to gain executive power with the aim of securing more influence must envision their organization's future and then express clearly what it holds for all stakeholders. None of that shall be limited to external communications alone. What's equally important is to craft a master plan for internal communications. Guido Wolf, founder of Germany's Konex Institute and an old study friend of mine, sees internal communication as a management discipline which requires a professional and holistic approach linked to the goals, principles, procedures, and further standards in an organization. Once the process of securing internal support is underway, the obvious next question is what kind of external content can and should be shared and how? Now, by definition, this includes narratives teeming with ideas that shape aspiration, specifically the ambition to achieve future goals. Having achieved the aspired future can then become a source of inspiration for external audiences. The individual steps depend on the situational context and professional environment, but when the focus is on the main beneficiaries and the public's best interest, not just short-term corporate goals and political gains, the ground is laid for strategies that come with a longer shelf life. Again, some Asian nations made enormous progress in that space and managed to attract plenty of investors, trade partners, employees, and tourists. I see the positioning as a leader in innovation-led development as the nation-state equivalent of corporate startups. People usually like startups because these are the companies that have this innovative and pioneering solutions to eminent problems or unique take on existing industry content. So given Asia's rapid modernization, Asian influence is definitely growing, especially in democratic technocracies. As Parag Khanna said, nothing succeeds like success. Respectability and positive image are no longer about succeeding according to a Western or historical archetype, but succeeding on one's own path. In that sense, success is about good governance, diversity, and talent attraction. Places that are doing these things are successful and gain in visibility. Now it's up to communicators to move on to innovation-led communications, and they get inspired by innovation-led development. What is also needed is the prioritization of transparency and accountability. The fast spread of misinformation and disinformation, especially via digital platforms, has created a global communication crisis that constitutes a significant threat to society. Investigative journalists and fact-checkers are already working hard to expose these propaganda tactics and to raise awareness of all inherent risks and consequences. Yet the sheer amount of disinformation requires that, since we're living in a post-truth and post-fact world, that we come up with a more integrated approach. Think tanks are researching and partnering with other relevant stakeholders to boost literacy and achieve actual change. And there are millions of PR practitioners worldwide who could also support these efforts. So teaming up with mass communication scholars, investigative journalists, analysts, and ethics experts by adding their insights to propaganda studies would be a smart move. A genuine commitment to ethical principles is what protects reputations and also rebuilds public trust in PR while delivering something meaningful related to purpose and shared values. Propagandists and their pundits often refuse to deal with all factual evidence. Exposing denial and deflection, gaslighting, and other attempts to distract should appeal to a wider audience. It also creates a track record of credibility of those who engage in that. In a world of fake news and baseless opinions, promoting critical thinking in media literacy is crucial. In June, Australian Communications Minister Michelle Rowland announced new legislation to combat the spread of misinformation on digital platforms. And media literacy and strategic communications also appears more frequently in speeches now by diplomats and academics who address the future of international relations. Dr. Markus Ederer, Germany's ambassador to Australia, mentioned this here, right there, at AIIA last year when he spoke about Russia's invasion of Ukraine and more. It is equally important to establish some ground rules and consensus about what defines the red lines between diverging opinions, freedom of speech, and the intentional distortion of truth. At the same time, great efforts must be made to avert intolerance, a rise in paranoia, and a descent into racism and xenophobia, and as the openness to other worldviews remains critical. Much of that falls to diplomacy. Public diplomacy is one of the most critical elements of countries' statecraft abroad, as it builds soft power by expanding diplomacy beyond the government level. One thing is clear, though: when non-state actors engage in various forms of cultural and citizen diplomacy, there can be no total control over the narrative. Or maybe the original narrative has been developed by the top leaders and then shared with them, but the way how they share it with others cannot be totally controlled. But that's okay. After all, it never helps to be control sick in any dynamic operating environment. The new imperative is to maximize influence and soft power, not total control. To Simon Anholt, independent policy advisor, author, and founder of the Good Country Index, soft power still derives from a conception of governance that privileges competition over collaboration. This would leave just one reasonable course for the future. In Anholt's words, we need to get to the stage where the culture of governance is collaboration with a little competition sprinkled over the top, not the reverse. Cultural diplomacy can deliver a lot in that space, especially music, as it is recognizable as the hallmark of a nation's cultural power. When new nations take over the presidency of the Council of the European Union, they now create a playlist on Spotify to reflect the nation's musical styles. That is something that I just read 2 weeks ago. I couldn't believe it. Spain is doing that right now. But it's great. And we even see ambassadors acting like entertainers and performers. Daniel Crittenbrink, former US ambassador to Vietnam, he posted a song called Your Boy in Hanoi. And that was super much welcomed by the Vietnamese younger population and also people in America and in other places of the world. And Hong Jin-wook, South Korea's ambassador to Egypt, is playing Egyptian songs on the saxophone. The embassy produced a video clip, Love for Egypt, saxophone by this Korean ambassador, 3D quad, and national anthem of Egypt. Also a boost to South Korea-Egypt ties. And Eldin Hussein Mohammed Hashim, Malaysia's ambassador to Cambodia, performed Silat in front of Cambodian teachers and students. Silat is the Malay term for martial arts and self-defense, and considered one of Malaysia's most lasting cultural heritage treasures. So this is an interesting new shift in diplomacy. With Asia being home to around 70% of the roughly 500 million indigenous people in 90 countries, gaining soft power via cultural promotion is a very smart move. Asian pop culture pulled in a vast global audience for many years, especially K-pop and J-pop. It also exceeds the enthusiasm of fan communities. In the UK, for example, interest in learning Asian languages has seen a constant rise for years, notably Japanese and Korean. And this is one story that you probably know. In 2021, the Korean boy band BTS was appointed as Korea's special presidential envoy at the 76th UN General Assembly. That had never happened before at the United Nations. And months later, BTS was invited to the White House to address their concerns over the surge in hate crimes against Asian Americans. That was another first. So here you have the proof, you know, cultural diplomacy gets you into a space where you never thought before you could be. And yes, you have the influence there that you wanted to have. And the rise of digital diplomacy is also having a huge impact. Social media, of course, remains key, but some nations are now using messaging apps too. States like Singapore and Somalia, for example, run their own public diplomacy channel on Telegram, which has some 500 million users. And we also see a rise in online and mobile gaming. It may seem doubtful at first, but it does in fact advance winning hearts and minds as users like these apps. The governments are already paying attention, and some are even developing their own games to shape perceptions. Altogether, this shows how diplomatic influence increases when being based on a strategic approach to new and real stakeholder engagement. Communicators should come up with strategies that unlock the full potential of soft power too, and reshape public opinion by balancing values and principles. The more convincing the efforts of pull, not push, the higher the chances of avoiding unsustainable competition in global markets. Now, this all hinges on people and talent, of course, and specifically how we interact with younger generations. Like in all people businesses, efficient talent management should always be at the top of the agenda. Likewise, a look at future orientation and skills of senior leaders and HR teams, the ones responsible for assembling the right workforce. Overseas stints are a great career accelerator that can also widen people's sense of self, especially when seeking purpose in their careers. So welcoming foreign talent in a multilateral world is more than just a smart move. It is a catalyst of enhanced international relations, stronger trade ties, and even a driver of soft power. Generational values are always changing. We all know that. But the younger generations today, the millennials and Gen Z, stand out as they place much greater emphasis on trustworthiness, activism, and advocacy. So HR teams must explore the sentiments and perceptions of those who come from other places. And understanding what motivates this new workforce and how to effectively recruit, train, and retain is a winning strategy for all forward-thinking organizations. I spoke with Abdul Rahman Rizilia, the co-founder and CEO of ARC Talent in Dubai, and he said that the progression of HR is still at an early stage, even in future-oriented societies. HR departments would do well by investing in new tech, such as talent intelligence systems, testing and assessment tools, and interviewing tools. That's not about replacing the humans who have to make sense of that, but to help them to gather more information and analyze it quicker. So with communications now also being affected by the global talent war, an all-inclusive review of long-established talent strategies and candidate selection criteria has become essential. In 2021, the global PR market was worth around $92 billion. By 2026, its total value might reach as much as $149 billion. As a result, there's a growing demand all over the world for skilled professionals who can effectively manage public relations, marketing, and branding. Many parts of Asia see an expansion of the communication infrastructure and industries. And due to their large and youthful population, most of the new teams are already tech-savvy, digitally connected, and have a strong understanding of social media platforms and digital communication channels. All new teams, no matter where, must place an emphasis on the ethical use of data analytics and AI to improve stakeholder engagement and real measurement. Once that becomes the new normal, enhancing strategies based on structured assessments and feedback mechanisms will literally guarantee a stable and predictable progression of communications. So we all know about ChatGPT. Launched in late November last year, it has led more people now to tap into AI systems for all kinds of things. Videos, music, I tried that myself, Donna knows all about it, and all kinds of stuff. The opportunities that artificial intelligence and data analytics present are profound. Now, reputations may be harder to pin down, but it can be retrieved from perception and sentiment data points. Machine learning employed by AI may actually be the easiest, fastest, and most efficient way to collect data and accelerate the generation of better communication strategies. The Middle East is likely to become one of the leading regions to spearhead this. Fares Ghanem of UAE-based data analytics firm Anavisio follows this closely, and he's convinced that Middle Eastern agencies will move on to hire data scientists. APCO Worldwide has set up a digital lab in Dubai that deploys AI-driven solutions to build and protect the reputations of major global brands, governments, and organizations. But as said, there are also ethical concerns. The most serious dangers associated with relying on AI-powered communications will be a result of inadequate corporate governance and regulation. What makes this such a challenge for AI is that the more seamless we make AI-powered experiences, the more complexity is going to be hidden. Carrington Malin is a leading UAE-based AI expert. He said, artificial intelligence will both enhance and replace human communications, and it will become increasingly hard for us to tell the difference. This could be because of black box algorithms that are not visible to corporate and government users. And as said, with AI reshaping geopolitics and revolutionizing the conception and implementation of diplomatic strategies, it also comes with an impact on international relations. Diplomats can gather deeper insights, stay updated on latest events and trends, make more informed decisions, build strategic communities of interest, and quickly measure the performance of diplomatic strategies. But there are also concerns about the credibility of diplomats relying on robots and chatbots to create content and engage with people. After all, we cannot ever expect that chatbots or robots can be held accountable. That's not happening. Anyway, in the years ahead, AI will undoubtedly become more entrenched across public and private sectors. And those who place ethics at the top and engage with audiences on their terms will reap the rewards many times over. Spotting progress in tech and incorporating it before others do also secures the much needed buy-in from the executive board. And that's the upside of enrolling technocracy in communications. And as said, it certainly helps in environments where things have to move much faster, and that is happening everywhere now. In business, speed is everything. That is Zoom founder Eric Yuan. Piyush Goyal, India's Minister of Railways and Commerce, made a similar point. The speed of decision-making is the essence of good governance. Once communicators in business and government accept this new reality, the ability to make swift yet profound decisions should become central. I call that Shenzhen speed and Dubai spirit, engineering the Asianization of communications. Overcoming the apparent contradiction of having to act faster, yet without cutting corners, is doable. Strategists just need to invest in advanced scenario planning and adhere to a far-sighted and imaginative way of tackling future challenges and exploring opportunities. Again, there's a lot to learn from the well-articulated vision, narratives, and determination of some of the emerging world's leading nations. Malaysia's very successful handling of the Asian financial crisis is an older but great case study. The approach sure must be adapted to deliver the real outcomes today, but that doesn't change the general concept behind it. The nation struggled with the rise of non-performing loans, and as a result, banks refrained from lending fresh capital to businesses, and the country's economy was in a state of decline. Anwar Ibrahim, then Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, quickly set up a national asset management company to help the ailing banking sector and to reassure the business community that Malaysia will manage it all without having to rely on IMF support, like Indonesia and other Asian tigers. Given that positive outcomes would depend on transparency and quickly meeting all set objectives, my agency then, appointed 4 days before this press conference, brought in the most senior professionals. Their decision-making power was crucial, as they had to liaise with the top leaders in government, and who had a perfect plan but still needed communication support based on quick assessments and decisions. So domestic and international media quickly praised the asset management company, then named Dana Harta, as proof of Malaysia's timely and meaningful step to get out of this disaster. So speed and delivery is a game changer. And that works when all of the leaders involved are cooperating. Communicators are best suited to become the coordinators and move on to an associated communication strategy and rollout plan. My book addresses that with a two-pronged path to the development of future-proof corporate and public affairs strategies. I call it Access and Beat. Some practitioners may prefer something that inspires them, while others look for a systematic approach. So Access is the inspirational model. Agility, can-do, creativity, entrepreneurship, strategy, and stuff. When everything can change overnight, achieving all objectives is easier once agility has become a core part of the managerial setup. Can-do spirit is a quintessential Asian way of doing things. Since everyone must deliver quickly, it is best to be resourceful enough and to observe how to absorb any blow from unexpected events. And since plans change quickly, but not expectations, it makes sense to appoint creative thinkers and doers who can also act as problem solvers. For those who grew up in Asia's fastest developing places over the last 20 years, constant change is the new normal. So assembling teams with an entrepreneurial mindset also helps, as they can adjust faster. In view of all this, strategic planning is a priority that includes an early risk assessment and the aforementioned advanced scenario planning. Organizations are as agile, can-do oriented, creative, entrepreneurial, and strategic as their teams. So it's good to attract staffers who think and act accordingly. They will gain more trust for being positive and thriving in high-pressure environments where the focus is less on procedure than outcomes. So, and BEAT is the aspirational and systematic approach, building and earning authority and trust, BEAT. It lays out a step-by-step path to develop strategies aimed at gaining influence, not exerting total control. I included everything I laid out in all 10 chapters of the book, including ways to jointly develop an organization's conceptual space that helps with the desired positioning and perception. To get there, you'll need active participation of senior executives and top decision makers. Again, that leaves organizations with just one sensible option: to scale up communications with one's own C-suite leaders who are committed to deliver tangible outcomes based on a more holistic and inclusive approach. And that idea has been shared for a long time. Let's try to get the 5th seat at the boardroom. But it doesn't happen all the time. It's just an idea. I'm sure there's some people here who know all about that. So winning with multicultural campaigns is, of course, never an easy task. But those who already manage it before others begin to accept while adjusting slowly will increase discourse power and secure people's support. And that's a future-ready model. I noticed that in Australia, engaging multicultural audiences and building trust is a topic that comes up more often in speeches by academics and diplomats. No wonder, this is such a diverse nation. The latest event where all this was addressed was La Trobe University's Australia Asia Identity event last week. And being so close to Asian countries and guided by a commitment to openness, multilateralism, and regionalism, I see Australia as the West's best nation to rebuild East-West relations. Business leaders who adjust to the shifting spheres of influence in the Asian century will also make more rapid progress. And all it takes is having agency, a preparedness to overcome the fear of disruption, a commitment to ethics, and a readiness to adapt. And that builds influence. Thank you very much.
Oliver, thank you very much. I think, as you said, in a post-truth, post-fact world, this is a very important book to address some of these issues. We'll come to a question, just stick your hand up if you have one, or we'll come to Zoom. But just, I was struck talking to you before the event started, you saying you'd written this during a COVID lockdown, and that the rule of thumb on relationships in Asia was always that you had to build the relationship, get to know people before you get into business, or in the Middle East, you sit around in the majlis and you talk to each other. I mean, have we, I mean, Zoom was great during lockdown. AI obviously has some benefits, but have we lost ground with Zoom? And how important do you think the face-to-face human touch still is?
That's a good question. Face-to-face human touch is obviously very important. We all know this because we meet here and we can have conversations before and after, and that is what I enjoy very much here. You know, but I think that the fast rise of Zoom added some interesting new perspectives, because for many students and others who were then stuck at home, they couldn't leave their home, they couldn't meet people, but they were continuing, I'm not talking about students now, continuing their studies. They now had a chance to get involved in webinars on Zoom, free of charge. And that was then interesting when there was an opportunity after a webinar to engage with the speakers through question and answers. And I thought about that a long time ago. I thought the best way to handle this is to actually think about what your questions might be, because you know what the topic is. Write down the question, deliver it to the panelists or the host of the event. And if you do that early, then you have a chance to actually become one of those who can bring up the question and get an answer from these people. And that connects you with academics and people in top positions, which is very hard to do person to person. We still want that, but we have another opportunity now. So the rise of Zoom over 2.5, 3 years was a game changer, clearly. And now we're back to in-person events, but also with an online audience. So we have both. That's the new normal, and that is fantastic.
Okay, so you'd also talked about the generational, Gen Z and millennials, and the tech savvy approach to developing this, whether it's public diplomacy or music diplomacy, whatever. I mean, some of the countries you talked about, Dubai, I remember very early on into e-government, or Singapore, Malaysia. A lot of these countries have got I guess a younger population. There's a higher percentage of youth, and sometimes the leaders tend to be a bit younger. I mean, are the countries with the demographics of an aging population or older, more set in their way leaders going to miss out on this?
This is a good point too. I think when we engage younger generations right now, I mean, millennials are already leaders, right? They're not the young kids anymore, but they are now the ones that can employ Generation Zers or Zoomers, not Zoomers, right? And so if we manage to engage them in the right way, then they, who will be the future leaders, know how to engage with all kinds of generations. And if we do it with a focus on multicultural audiences, then they can also engage across the world. And that is super important, because, as I said, we're living in a hyper-connected world, post-truth, post-fact, but hyper-connected. So how do you gain influence with them? Well, you need to find ways to engage them with something that people normally accept, and that is truthfulness, credibility, a focus on facts and evidence of what you say, and an openness to listen to all other worldviews, right? So this is very important. So I think it depends really on how much we engage the younger generation now, because they will take over the leadership very soon. And that is key across businesses, but also in governance.
How worried are you about AI distorting the message or fake news? How do you counter fake news by better communication or more targeted communication?
This is in fact something that we all begin to experience now. We heard about deep fakes and all this for many years already. We knew AI will rise. We knew it was coming, and we saw occasionally videos on Twitter that were not real. You see someone saying something that he never said, but now it is all over the place. And of course, there is a real risk that we are facing statements from people that they never made, that we read something, that we are just exposed to the smartest form of fake news and deep fakes that we have never experienced before. But at the same time, AI can also help to counter that. So again, it's the leaders in governance and business who say our principles are ethical, and we will counter this. And we will team up with everyone who will support us in that, because this is the new world we're living in. We need to make sure that we're not all suffering from all this kind of threats that come from there. I mean, you probably all know, you get text messages that are really bizarre. You get emails that are bizarre. They look more and more like the real email from your bank, right? It's just when you go to the real sender, then you see, no, it's not my bank. It's something else. But they get smarter and better. So we need AI to help us encounter that. And that is the future. So when we hold people accountable and know that they are committed to this, then we're dealing with the right people. And if we don't do that, then we don't know what comes out of this.
I've got a question, picking up on your Shenzhen speed and Dubai spirit. So when you were based in Dubai, what did you find? That the fact it was such a multicultural country with not many layers together, was that something that was making a difference and creating new ideas?
Yes. Yeah, I see. I mean, when I started working in Asia, the general line was Singapore is the melting pot of the world, right? Because you have so many different nationalities there. And that is still the case. But if you go to Dubai today, this is the connectivity capital of the world. And when when I went to Expo 2020, which happened in 21 because it was delayed by 1 year due to COVID, it was amazing to see how many people were there from different parts of the world. And also when you were on a bus that took you from your parking area to the Expo City, all the different languages that you heard. So it is really the connectivity capital of the world. And so that is making a huge impact on attraction of talent that then come, and it just raises this kind of a shift to an international audience. And so the same thing is not the case with Shenzhen. I call it Shenzhen speed and Dubai spirit. Shenzhen speed is, well, Shenzhen is a city that basically rised in just 2 decades or so from a small town to a multi-million population. So the Chinese look at this and say, this is something that we believe will help us. It started with the special economic zones set by Deng Xiaoping, right? And the Dubai spirit is linked to can-do spirit. So what people always say, and Alistair lived there too, he would know, people say can-do is at the top of the list. Not no, we can't do it, you don't say. We find a way. And I had to learn how this works when things have to happen so fast. Because this is what I always heard from consultants who parachuted in. No, we can't do that. We need 3 months to develop the strategy. I said, no, this is not how it works. You do advanced scenario planning. You know already what kind of environment you're working in. You prepare for that, and then you can do it, right? But you'd have to have the right workforce, the right people, as I said, thinkers and doers and problem solvers, right? That people that have an entrepreneurial mindset that think like you, we can handle it. And when there's no clear brief from the client, then you have the opportunity to actually add all your knowledge about how you have done it in the past and add to the brief yourself, right? But only when you deal with the top decision makers. And that is a case I made several times in my speech. When PR practitioners, communicators, and governance and business engage with top leaders, then you have them support you, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who decide whether what you did was good or not, right? But if they were buying into it at an earlier stage, because you sent the right people to deal with them, then you have security and safety for yourself and also for the outcome that you want. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Sorry, it was a long answer.
We got one here, I think, and then we'll come to this. We have time for 2 more.
Thank you. Petra from PH Communications. Oliver, thank you so much, and congratulations on your wonderful book. Look forward to reading it and your presentation. I obviously am concerned about chat AI, as many other people are, and AI going across the world. How do you feel that, as a public relations, communications, public affairs person, that you can protect the people that you are presenting with communications not being integrated from AI into their speeches? And, obviously they're coming from all angles, as you said, the emails, the integrated communications, etc. We aren't understanding where they're coming from always, but they have, they pop up and they're not necessarily the spokesperson. How can you protect people, or how do you recommend people to protect the people that they are representing?
Yeah, I think this is something that we all have to learn how to do it. It's very hard to come up with a final strategy how to deliver that now, because as I said, it's only when ChatGPT came up in November last year, then we saw a rise in AI spreading all over the place. But now it is clear that in every business and in every government department, you should have someone whose focus is entirely on AI, not just how you do it yourself, but also how you read what comes in, how you view what comes in, how to make sense of it, whether you can verify it or validate it, and whether you can protect people with the right evidence that this is fake, this is not real, right? When it looks real, but it is not real. You need to make the point so that people buy into that. And you cannot make mistakes here, because otherwise then you look like a propagandist yourself. And that's not what you want. So this whole chapter about propaganda starts actually with social media and with AI, because this is the rise that we saw before AI took over in the way that we see right now. So now we have to expand this view, right? It is still social media, but it is also all other apps and all other kind of situations. So if you have the right workforce, the right people, if you have data scientists who can do data analytics and make sense of all the data and get a sense of public sentiments and opinions, then you also have the people who can identify what is fake and what is real. And that is the future. So you need to expand your workforce.
One last question.
June Lamb, I didn't hear very much about listening, but I think that maybe listening is a very important part of communication. But how do you do fast listening?
Well, listening, I did bring it up. I said it at the beginning. Listening is the first thing that you do before you come up with your own ideas and your own plans. You listen to other worldviews, ideas, business strategies, and then you contribute to that, because at the end it is for communicators about protecting reputations. That's in business and government. It's the same thing. So in order to make sure that you listen, you need the right people to sit at the same boardroom table with those who make decisions. So, because if you have only junior people who do it, of course, you will bring them in as well, because they need to learn how this works. But you need those who can make then decisions in response to what they hear from the top leaders. And if that is working quickly, then it works in a new world where things are happening much faster. And if you don't deliver on that, then they will shift to someone else who can. That's not the future.
Okay. That actually takes us to our allotted hour, but feel free to stick around and come and have a chat to Oliver via book. But Oliver, thank you very much. Really, you've covered an awful lot of ground. It's a very complex subject. It's a bit of a brave new world out there, or at least for those from my generation. I'm glad there's people like you out there addressing it and giving us a pathway. So congratulations on the book. Yes, indeed. And thank you for coming along. Please join in.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. And thank you.
Thank you to the Zoom audience.